This is going to be a bit of a nostalgia video because the 1980s were better than the 2020s, and we're only 1 year through. Yeah, we have 9 more years of this shit to go, and already we know the 1980s were better. Now, I did not have a good childhood. I'm sure personally for myself, no matter what the 2020s bring, my 2020s will be better than the 1980s. So I had a horrible childhood experience. I don't really want to think much about it, but at least I had good movie theater experiences. So this is going to be going through my favorite movie theater experiences in childhood. I'm going to go through all those movies. We'll look at the Rotten Tomatoes reviews, then I'll give my looking back perspective and review on these films. I'm going to go through these in chronological order, kind of by year, and this is the only one from 1981. I was 5 years old. What am I going to remember from 1981? I remember Miss Piggy on a motorcycle, and when you're 5 years old and there's Miss Piggy on a motorcycle, I guess that's about it. According to Rotten Tomatoes, this is in the 70s. This should be 90%, according to my memory. Next one is E.T. 1982 now. I saw this in the theater. I remember loving in the theater. I remember going home and going through the scenes with my brother. So I guess at the time, this is a 90%er. And I know it's this all-time classic film for many people. It's like their best film ever, their best childhood film. I mean, I put it on the list because it definitely was one of my best childhood movie experiences. But it's one of these things where I'm looking back. Was it really one of my absolute favorite? It's not really on the top of the list, I think. I would probably just give it like in the 70%. I'm sorry, E.T. just is not one of my absolute favorite films. It's just good enough to make the list. Star Trek II, I was 6 years old and I had no fucking idea what was going on in this film. I mean, I was really too young for it, but it's Star Trek, so I remember my mom took me and my brother to it. I kind of almost left it off the list because it really wasn't super enjoyable, but in the other way, it's very memorable. I remember going there. I remember sitting there waiting for this amazing Star Trek movie to start. I heard all this about Star Trek, how it's this amazing thing. It kind of put me off Star Trek for a couple of years. So it's very memorable. If I'd rate it now, I say the movie's like a 90%, but back then I probably would have been like 50%, like, what the fuck was that? Going to 1983 now, National Lampoon's Vacation. And, this is one of these things when looking back, it's kind of like, what were you thinking? Like, taking me to this raunchy, R-rated comedy? But my mom took me and my brother to see this. And what I remember about the movie theater experience is the end with the roller coaster. And I had no idea what a roller coaster really was at that point, and I was so amazed that this thing actually existed. So I remember the roller coaster more than the comedy, but of course the Moose and all this, how can you forget Marty Moose? At the time I would have said 90%, and I would still say that now. This is one of the best comedies ever. Return of the Jedi, without any doubt, was my favorite movie experience of all time. I don't think this is close to the best film of all time. It's definitely not even the best Star Wars film ever. But at the time, the best movie experience ever. I vividly remember this from when I was like 7 years old. Specific scenes, watching it in the theater. Remember the audience reaction. I just love this film in the theater. Superman 3. Now, is this a great film? No. But when it comes to quality of childhood movie experience, this has to be there because all the way back from like 1983, this is still. And I remember sitting in the theater watching this. I remember, Kings Plaza, a movie theater. My mom took me and my brother to this. I remember sitting there for a long time thinking, where's Superman? Who is this black dude that I'm watching for so much of the movie? But, Superman was in it, and then at the end with the supercomputer, and it turns the woman into, like, the cyborg. That is, like, the freakiest thing ever. Especially when you're that age. And because of that, how that's burned into my memory, watching that as a child, Superman 3 has to make the list. And about these reviews in the 20%, I mean, was this movie really that bad? Obviously, look, it's not a great movie. It's nowhere near as good as Superman 1 or Superman 2. And at that point, I see Superman 2 on the TV over and over again. But I mean, we didn't go in at that time looking to hate the film or criticize it. We were just going to have fun at the theater. I mean, if I were to rate that as a child, I probably would have given it like a 70, 80%. As an adult, like 50%. It was an okay movie. No, it's not some great superhero film, but I mean, it was okay. I don't understand why people have to hate on the film so much. Here's the final one from 1983, A Christmas Story. I remember my dad took me and my brother to see this in this dinky theater. We saw this with like six other people, and you think, who the hell heard of this movie by this Gene Shepard guy? I mean, you think you leave the theater and you're never going to hear about this again. You have no idea that this is going to turn into this massive cult classic hit that it was. At the time, I probably would have given it like an 80%. Looking back now, if I'd rate the film like 90%, I did enjoy this in the theater. Did I totally get everything? No, but considering what was going on with me at school, I liked the whole bully part. I know beating up the bully is fun. Ghostbusters is one of the most definitive films of the 80s. For many, it's one of their favorite comedies ever or close to that. It's not one of my favorite comedies of all time, but I saw it in the theater. I liked it. At the time, I probably would have given like 90%. Looking back now, around 80%. So for me, it's not all the way on the top there, but I can't leave Ghostbusters off this list. This is one of those movies that's kind of, oh, bring the whole family, and then it's just going to freak everyone out and give them nightmares, at least when you're like 8 years old. So this was kind of freaky at the time. Of course, can't forget it. You can't forget the rules about not getting them wet, not feeding them after midnight. Um, okay, what more can I say? I think the reviews for this are about right. I would probably rate this a little bit higher. Well, seeing it right now, because it was on TV like several months ago, and I saw most of it. And I think if you're just a really sophisticated movie watcher and you've seen hundreds and hundreds of films over your life, you kind of see the beats coming. But as a child, you really don't see where this is going. And I think that maybe the childhood experience was probably like 90%, but as an adult, looking back right now, it kind of loses a bit of that. Okay, it's the Muppets. Muppets Take Manhattan. Can't leave the Muppets off this list. The way I look at it, we had three classic Muppet films, and then they kept on making like more Muppet films for no reason, and I really have not seen any Muppet film after this. It's like there was the original one that I saw on TV all the time, The Great Muppet Caper, Muppets Take Manhattan, and they could have just ended it right there. But anyway, I think the ratings for this is about correct. It's not as good as The Great Muppet Caper, but I think it's definitely a solid Muppet film entry. Well, a couple of years earlier, my mom already took us to see National Lampoon's Vacation. This time it was my father took my brother and I to see Police Academy, a raunchy R-rated film. And I remember the end with the riot, and I thought that was funny. And we had to think it's funny because we saw Police Academy 2 in the theater and Police Academy 3. And I think we saw Police Academy 4 in the theater as well. Yeah, because by the time Police Academy 4 came around, I was aware, hey, that first one was really funny. That was the R-rated one. And the second one was PG-13. And, then I kind of realized, hey, this is going downhill, and it's not as funny, and it doesn't have that same R rating like the first one. Um, as a child, Police Academy 1 in the theater, I would have given like 90%. Looking back at it right now, I probably would be like, yeah, 50%, like this is a stupid film. But, we liked it a lot at the time. Goonies is the one that gave me nightmares. Like, I kind of have it in my head with Ghostbusters and Gremlins as these three films at the same time with a bit of that horror theme in different ways. This is the one with the skeletons and the death that, like, for, a couple of nights after, it's like I was thinking about this laying in bed and it was hard to sleep. This one I remember more like the whole family going, because usually I'd see movies either my mom would take us or my dad would take me and my brother, or my dad would just take me. But this one we all saw it together and we all loved it, so I kind of remember this as the family going all out and seeing this together. I think the ratings are about right. Maybe at the time we left thinking this is like one of the best films ever. Whereas right now I'm just looking at it as more of like a solid Star Trek film. So at the time I probably would have said like 90%, but looking at it now, probably like 80, 85%. Second one from 1986, Invaders from Mars. Oh my god, I hated the ending of this film. It was so stupid. I was really into this film the whole time. Like, I love this film. I remember seeing the beginning. It was really freaky. I was into this thing for like almost 90 solid minutes. And then it turns out it's all a dream sequence at the end. And that totally pissed me off. Not only do I remember watching it and being pissed off, I saw it with my dad, just my dad. And then we went back home. Actually, we're at my grandmother's. Went back to my grandmother's where my mother was. I remember ranting off about how horrible it is that they ended as it was all a dream sequence. This totally pissed me off. Does it make most memorable childhood film experiences? Yes, because nothing made me so angry at this film. After seeing it at the time, I probably would have rated this like a 10% that it pissed me off. But kind of looking back, to be honest, I was so engrossed in the film the whole time. That's why I was so angry. If it was a crappy film with a crappy ending, I wouldn't be pissed off. But I loved the film to the end. I mean, looking back now, I probably would have been like 60% or so. I haven't seen it since. It's not so bad. I don't know why this film has a 33%. I mean, it was entertaining in the theater until like the last minute. Here's the only entry for 1987 on the list. That's Spaceballs. I don't know what I can say about this film. It's just the funniest film ever made. I have seen this so many times. Like, this is something where me and my brother saw this film every time. We kind of have memorized the movie line by line. Um, okay, you can't have a high enough rating. This should be like 100% in terms of comedies because this kind of mastered the art of comedy. This is the only Nightmare on Elm Street film I saw in the theater. Actually, when it comes to any of these horror franchises, like Halloween, Friday the 13th, whatever, I haven't seen in the theater. But this one I did, and what I remember about this is I didn't see this with one of my parents because they wouldn't take me to see such a shitty film. And they know this stuff is crap. Yeah, Police Academy, yeah, you go out and see that. My father, no problem with that, but he wasn't going to take us to see Nightmare on Elm Street. So this was, I had this friend in elementary school, and it was, I forgot which one of his relatives was taking us to see this. So this was a totally different experience of going out with my friend and seeing this like horror type film that other people have seen, but I never saw a horror film before. And I remember getting soda, and it was this giant thing of Coke and being like, what the fuck am I going to do with this? How am I going to drink all this? And I remember the roach scene. This movie was kind of freaky at the time. So I had a great time seeing it. I haven't seen it since. Probably the time I would have given the film a 90%. I'm sure if I would watch it now, I'd probably give it like a 20%. But in terms of delivering on that childhood movie horror experience, I mean, this really was a great film. This is the only one from 1988, The Bear, and I'm the one who wanted to see this movie because I liked animals. I liked watching stuff like, Wild America and Nature and TV. And The Bear came out, and I wanted to see The Bear. My father took me to see The Bear, even though this is not the typical movie that you think a 12-year-old would want to go out and see. But I really liked this one in the theater. Uh, it's one of these films that it was like a memory between me and my father. And again, there's a lot of craziness going on the outside. Did not have a good childhood, but I think that there are, that's one of these things, like some memories at least, like going to see a film like this. This was much more of a cerebral type film that I was used to seeing, obviously. But I think it kind of reflected the type of person I was becoming in terms of not being that person who wants to watch stupid raunchy comedies like Police Academy, but cares more about things that make you think. So this is kind of like the first like intellectual film I saw in the theater. I remember the theater experience seeing this really well because I really wanted to see this movie. and no one else did, and no one was going to take me to see it. No one gave a fuck about seeing Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. And I remember it was some Sunday night, and everyone was busy. My mom was busy, my dad was busy, and then finally they're like, "Oh, it'll just drop you off, and you can see it yourself." Which was like, wow, I get to see a movie by myself, which was the first movie I saw by myself is Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. So I remember that whole experience, where I was, and I really loved that film at the time. At the time, I would have given like a 90% plus. I loved this in the theater. I guess I was easier to please them because right now I'm not really like loving most movies I watch on Netflix or whatever. I think this one I only saw with my brother, and there were a couple like starting at this time, next couple of years that I just went with him. Getting we're now becoming like teenagers. I have to put this on because it's the first Indiana Jones film I saw in the theater. If I saw Temple of Doom in the theater, it absolutely would be on this list, and it would be on the top of this list of best movie experiences ever. But I didn't see Temple of Doom in the theater, and I always thought that was a terribly underrated film, and the others were kind of overrated. Oh, I saw the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull in the theater also with my mom, but that was obviously much later. So this was a great action film. There's not much to say about it. Okay, that's it. This is the final one on the list, and I'm ending it in the 80s, because once I get to the 90s, I'm a bit of a teenager then already. I saw this in the theater with my mom, and we used to go and see all these horrible comedies, and she would talk about laughing at the other suckers in the theater because we'd see it, these matinees, these crappy films with like a handful of other people in the theater, and this is one of them. This is one of these stupid comedies we saw, and this is one of the funniest films ever. This is close to Spaceballs in terms of how funny it is. I know there's three in my mind, classic, unbelievably funny films on this list. Spaceballs, National Lampoon's Vacation, and UHF. This is at the same time we saw Young Einstein, but Young Einstein is not on this list. Didn't make the cut. UHF, I don't know how it has such low rating. I would give this like 90% plus then. I would give it that now. How good this film is. I just recorded this whole thing, and then I realized there's one movie I left out from 1989. I saw this with my brother. This is Who's Harry Crumb. This is John Candy at his absolute best. This is absurd, it's ridiculous, it's funny. This is one of the best comedies ever. I wouldn't put it up at the level of Spaceballs, UHF, Vacation. It's a little bit below. But this is a fucking good comedy. I don't know how any critic could give in the 20s or audience in the 40s. I don't know what's wrong with that. Someone has to be in drugs to give this movie such a low rating, because this is one of the best comedies that I have ever seen. And I've seen a lot of bad, stupid comedies growing up. Definitely one of the best.